hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is John Sagamini. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for VTA. We're embarking on an effort to update our long-range transportation plan. We're calling it Valley Transportation Plan 2050, or VTP 2050 for short. So during the meeting, I may switch off from saying Valley Transportation Plan and VTP. We're actually talking about those two things are going to be the same. Another thing I want to note is, this is our first meeting. So we want to use this kind of as a listening session for the public to help them, first of all, kind of educate them on what this plan is, and then ask some specific questions on the feedback we're looking for at this stage. There will be more opportunities for us to have a meeting like this with the public in the near future. As we're just kicking off, the next 3 months are going to be really vital in that community outreach. And throughout this process, we will be coming back at various intervals to the public to get their feedback and input. And so I just want to remind everyone that since this is a public meeting, just want to be respectful to everyone that's here. You'll have an opportunity to provide us that feedback during our breakout session later on in the program. So what I wanted to do is kind of go through the meeting itself and then, get some specific feedback that we're asking, and really wanted to give a chance for the public to actually be a part of this planning process, to actually give us some direction and guidance as we move forward. Before we kind of get started, just want to kind of introduce some other team members here. We have Deanna Bolio, who's our community outreach person for this project. We have Gretchen Beisa, who's also who's the manager in community outreach, helping us with developing the public outreach process for the plan. We also have here Larissa Sandifer and Ian Lynn. Both Ian and Larissa are planners here, and they'll be part of the breakout sessions when we get there. So really what we want to do with this effort is really help the public understand our role in transportation for Santa Clara County. We want to share some preliminary plan visioning that we have that we want to get some feedback on, and then break out into the breakout session to actually give a chance for everyone to speak throughout the process. There's also the chat function that you'll be able to ask any questions through that method, or a raise hand feature, which we'll get to. Want to note also that we're going to do a little poll at the beginning to kind of get to figure out who you are and how you get around. And again, we really think this is important to kind of understand kind of the layout of the land, and have us, really get really good feedback on developing the plan. And the plan itself is going to last over a year, so it'll be about a 1.5 year process. So throughout the stage of that 1.5 years, we will be looking for specific feedback from the public. And then at the end of it, we'll get to the timeline and next steps and kind of the process that we're going through next. All right, I'm going to hand this over right now to Deanna to kind of go over some of the control features here, and she'll then launch us into the user poll, which there'll be a few questions.
Thank you, John. I'm here just for a minute to talk about a couple Zoom logistics as we meet today. Please feel free to use the chat function if you have a question or comment at any point throughout this meeting. The chat button you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, squared in orange here. Just make sure that your message is set to everyone, so we're including everybody in the conversation. We're going to ask you all to mute yourselves whenever you're not speaking to eliminate any background noise and distractions. At some point, you might be asked by a meeting host to unmute yourself and participate, at which point you would receive a little gray box notification asking you to do so. And for anybody who is using phone audio instead of computer audio, *9 will let you raise your hand, and *6 will let you mute and unmute yourself. So 9 to raise your hand, 6 to mute and unmute. Next slide, please. And like John mentioned, we are going to do a little live polling of those of you here with us tonight. It helps us see who's with us and lets us know how reflective this group is of our community. So I am going to launch the poll now. The first 3 questions are demographic questions. And then the last 5 questions are about how you travel. So how often do you drive? Do you ride a bike? Do you ride light rail? Or how often are you a pedestrian? So I will leave this open for a minute or so and let you fill out that. And then we will share results. Polling is optional, but it is helpful feedback. So please participate. Give that another 30, 35 seconds or so. Okay. I'm sharing the results now. You see a pretty diverse age range, which is great. Glad to have all of you from 18 to 65 and over, which is wonderful. We've got our ethnic groups, which is also split this evening. Household income. Now let's get into our travel modes. So how often are people driving? It's pretty split actually, mostly with frequently, also infrequently and never represented. The bus, we see 8 out of 20 say frequently, 9 out of 20 infrequently, a couple nevers. Down to light rail, more infrequently we see on light rail. How is our bike crew doing? 30% of you ride frequently, 10% infrequently, and 60% never. And then our pedestrians, frequently, people are on foot or on scooter or on wheelchair. So you're getting around in various ways. So thank you for participating. It's really helpful. And now I will turn it back over to John to get into the meat of the BTP.
Thank you, Deanna. I think a big question that a lot of people have is what's BTA's role within Santa Clara County? Obviously, a lot of people out there know us as the transit authority. So we run buses and light rail, and people are very familiar with that. But we're also the county transportation agency for Santa Clara County, which means we also are a funding conduit for the cities and other agencies. We actually build and design various different transportation projects. So we do obviously our transit facilities and transit service. An example of that is our extension to East Ridge. We also are planning and designing BART to Silicon Valley, which is open now till Berryessa, but there's more work to be done having that head to Santa Clara. We also plan for congestion management and land use. So one of the roles we also play is that we partner with our member agencies on various land use discussions. We provide feedback on various different projects and plans that cities come up with. And we also are kind of a liaison between the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is the regional planning agency. So the kind of the wheel of life that you see here on the right, that is kind of what is representative of VTA. So more than just buses and light rail, but we do other things in relation to transportation. And the Valley Transportation Plan itself is really a big step to developing and delivering many of those projects and programs. So many of you are wondering, what is VTP? This is not something that we've done very often, But the last time we updated this was back in 2015. And so what the Valley Transportation Plan is the long-term plan for transportation, land use, transit, and bicycle and pedestrian planning for Santa Clara County. We tend to look at the future. We tend to look at things 25 to 30 years in advance. A major component of this is actually identifying transportation projects and programs. By having a project in the Valley Transportation Plan that makes it more accessible for funding from the federal and state government or other regional sources. We also help our member agencies and cities to secure funding for these projects. We're also considering all types of travel. So it's not just bus and light rail, it's a variety of different things. We have a bicycle program, we also have a highway program, and we have a local streets program, some of it which was funded by the most recent 2016 Measure B program. And so another really key piece of this planning process is this actually feeds into the regional transportation plan, which is called Plan Bay Area 2050. And we can put a link in the chat to that plan. And so what Plan Bay Area 2050 is the long range plan for the 9-county Bay Area. So our input to that process is this Valley Transportation Plan. And we realized over time that, this is something that we want everyone to participate in. I know in some cases, you're looking at 25, 30 years, it's very abstract, it's far out from the future. And a lot of, times we tend to think of things happening right away. But this kind of helps us fund some of those major projects and think of really good planning programs that we can implement, that we can share with the public and our member agencies. We also realized that during this process, there's a lot of other questions VTA is asking you. Right now, we're working on a climate action plan that recently had a public meeting. We're also getting set as part of the VTP process to talk about our transit network through what they call the Visionary Transit Network. And that gives us a chance to develop a transit program for Santa Clara County. And so we really feel like your input is really important. In the past, what we've done with the VTP is actually bring forward projects and just say this equals the plan. But I think things have changed in the world, especially with COVID and how we commute, with kind of some people being able to work from home. It's kind of changed traffic patterns. So we have to be ahead of the game with this planning process and try to identify areas where we can help our public to get around. So this is really important. And this is something that we've not done this way before. And we want to do it more inclusive and more open to everyone, to actually you have a say in what goes in the plan that eventually will get adopted by our board of directors. So you might be wondering, well, what are we asking through this process? So the vision itself for VTP will be guided by the feedback from the community. So we want to make sure the plan aligns with future growth that's going to happen within the county, and that the transit and transportation needs in the next 30 or so years is up to that task. And so there's 3 questions that we're going to be asking through this process. Since this is the first meeting, the first 3 months of this meeting, we're doing kind of, as I mentioned in the beginning, kind of a listening session. We want to hear from everyone, from kind of directing us, like, what should the goals be? So these 3 questions are going to be repeated back in our breakout groups. We think this is a good opportunity for everyone to have a chance to say what they feel the goals for this planning process should be, what priorities for transportation should this include, and how do we achieve our shared vision for transportation. So this process is not only going to include the feedback from the community, but we're also going to be reaching out to our member agencies and local community organizations for additional feedback as well. And again, as it says kind of at the bottom, the feedback is going to help us develop transportation planning and projects for many years to come. So where we are right now is kind of thinking about those vision and goals and having some feedback geared back at us to tell us what we should be looking for. And as we move towards the spring of next year, that'll give us then a chance to develop projects based on that vision and goals. And that draft list of projects will be folded into the draft VTP document, which will occur throughout the year of 2023. And we hope to adopt the plan at the end of the year in 2023. So there'll be more than one opportunity to participate. So I don't want to say that this is the only time. This is not. You'll have plenty of opportunities, and we're actually really looking for feedback in different ways. So if you could help us also kind of figure out who we need to be talking to, that would be a great help. And especially at the early stage, it's really helpful. So some issues that we should consider. Our county is actually growing faster than the other Bay Area counties. Even after the pandemic, it's still slated that Santa Clara County will grow more than any other county in the 9-county Bay Area. And so a couple of things to keep in mind. We want to be aware of that things are still happening in this county. We want to make sure we're addressing climate change through this effort. As many of you may or may not know, the VTA board, right before the pandemic, actually declared a climate emergency. And one of those challenges is for us to try to figure out how to address, how climate is warming, sea level rise, things like that. So it's really up to us through this planning process to start to ask some of those questions. And so we want to also look at these designations called priority development areas and equity priority communities. And I'll get to those slides of what that actually means. But I think as part of that big discussion is also the question of equity. Who is this plan serving? We want this plan to be far reaching, and we need your help to do that. We want to make sure that we're reaching all groups, that we're not neglecting the disadvantaged communities in Santa Clara County. So we want to be aware of a couple of these things. So as you think about what you want to, what feedback you want to give to us, I think it'd be really helpful to kind of keep those things in mind. So as I mentioned, these graphics are from the Plan Bay Area 2050 that the Metropolitan Transportation Commission adopted back in October of 2021. What it noted in that was that 1/3 of the region's growth will be in Santa Clara County, and its population will increase by about 25%. We expect to have more households and more jobs. And we have it in different ways, not how we've done it in the past, but in different ways. Another area that the Plan Bay Area document actually really focused on was this notion of priority development areas and transit-rich areas. And really, what is that? I mean, maybe some of you do not know what that is, but what these priority development areas are locations that have been self-identified by the cities in the county. And you can see the color of that is purple. So everything in purple is what they call a priority development area. And so those are the areas that have really frequent transit service. And also have the most potential for developing both in housing and jobs. They not necessarily have all the requirements of a priority development area, but they are areas that have increased transit service. So between 15 and 30-minute frequency of transit, just not designated by the member agency. However, these are locations that there will be some growth identified in the future for this. And the reason that we bring this up is we do want to tie this back to the Plan Bay Area. And so a lot of our thinking will be around serving the communities that have frequent transit, but also figuring out ways to include some of these other areas that are outside of that boundary, and how do we, make sure we're planning for everyone. So next slide here is another designation that Plan Bay Area had, was what they call equity priority communities. So these are communities that have lower income population, limited English proficiency, have a large senior population, disability, or rent burden. And these are locations that have been identified where there needs to be additional planning efforts that go in to help develop these areas and support the community that lives there. And why are priority development areas and equity priority communities important is because I think that lays a really good framework for this county on where we should kind of, in some cases, focus our efforts, but at the same time also be aware that these are specific communities that a lot of the funding is going to work. So we want to make sure that these areas are ready for funding. And so the next few slides that we're going to talk about is just kind of our initial plan vision. We want to note that, these are really preliminary, some of the thoughts we've had, wanted to share with the public, and also, have a chance during the breakout sessions to provide us some feedback. And I think in the breakout sessions, we'll have about 20 to 25 minutes to make sure we hear from everyone. And so part of this process, again, will be fed into the next Planberry update, which is slated to start in 2023, and that will end in 2024. So we want to get ahead of the game and start having some discussions about how we want to move forward. So I want to make a plug before we get into what our vision for transit is. We're embarking on an effort called the VTA Visionary Network for Transit. This is kind of a subset of our Valley Transportation Plan. This is an effort that will have separate public meetings, and we're also doing pop-ups for that transit planning work. So the feedback we get through that process is actually going to help us with forming our transit vision for Santa Clara County. And really what the Visionary Network will do is, how do we want to picture transit going forward the next 30 years? So where should we plan that service? How often should buses and trains arrive? What do stations look like? How do we improve the stops that we have? And a lot of it, I'll be honest, is going to be focused on frequency. So right now, our major transit routes are running at 15-minute frequencies. We want to maybe look at that and see if we can increase that frequency, and what will it take to get there. So this is another important effort that we're kind of launching as in tandem with the VTP process. And so we will let you know at the end of the meeting where the Visionary Network for Transit. So if you have really a big interest in transit itself, we're actually going to have specific meetings related to that Visionary Network. And we invite everyone that's here to also participate in that effort. Our vision is going to be about complete streets. One of the things that we want to note, we used to call this program Local Streets and Roads, but I think it's a little bit more than that. I think our vision is to really help create streets that are safe for everyone. And the framework of complete streets really looks at safety and moving people of all abilities through various streets. Obviously, each street is different throughout the county, but it really focuses around using existing space, supporting bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and interaction with transit and other mobility. So as part of this, one of the things that we're also called the bicycle superhighway, which is going to be connecting various major bike routes into one sort of highway for that's separated, that's safe. In some cases, have minimal interaction with the road, with vehicle traffic. We also want to consider other mobility options, ride share, scooter share, bike share. These are all things that are happening and that we need to be on top of. We want to see how that infrastructure supports our vision for complete streets. And we also want to make sure that the infrastructure is there, supported by the development that goes along that in our various corridors of streets. We have a highway program. This is a topic that can be a little bit controversial, admittedly. Our vision for highways is going to be focused on efficiency. One of the key feedback we've heard from both Caltrans and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission is that they're moving away from freeway widening, increasing capacity. So what they're really looking at is ways that we can use usable space and be more efficient. And one of the ways that VTA is doing it is to really focus our efforts onto interchanges that interact with all modes of transportation. And another effort that our team is working on is the express lane network. And that network is based upon converting, in some cases, converting HOV lanes into pay lanes, where a solo driver may pay to use that lane. But we have a program right now that is looking at US 101 and Highway 85 for their entire length to implement that program. And one of the keys of doing the express lane network is any funding that's generated through that process can be put back into the transportation system. I think one of the things that we'd want to do as part of the express lane network is do a strategic plan. Obviously, there's questions around equity regarding express lanes and pricing and things like that. So we'll be embarking on a strategic plan for our express lane network that will be held by some of our planners for this process. So we want you guys to consider these modes as well. And we actually have a vision for land use. And our vision for land use will encourage development of transit-oriented communities. So we want to focus our priorities on our transit service, our transit system. We want to be sustainable. We want to have what they call a 15-minute city, where there are locations that can be reached within 15 minutes that really minimize the need to drive, promote a job housing balance, and making transit convenience and creating a sense of place. But we also want to note that our member agencies, our cities and the county, are embarking on efforts through either their general plan process or another, like a specific planning process, that they're tending to develop corridor plans. I know the city of Sunnyvale had developed an El Camino's precise plan that looks at how to promote development along El Camino while still making it viable for both pedestrians, for all pedestrians, bikes, and transit. City of San Jose and the downtown area created a downtown area plan that looks at increasing mode share within the downtown area, supporting transit and supporting development. And on the land use vision that we have is actually can only happen if we partner with our member agencies. We want to look at the good work that cities have done. We want to support them, and also try to figure out how does VTP and this planning process help them with all the planning work that they're doing. So that kind of concludes the presentation. I want to check the chat to see if there's any comments or questions beyond here. So kind of going down the list here. A message from one of our participants: would love that our Wheel of Life, what VTA does, include bike lanes and bike planning. Definitely will do that. We will share the slides. We'll put it on our website. And before I end the presentation, we'll share links to where that is. And we're going to have Deanna put the links in the chat. Can highways be converted for rapid bus networks? So one of the things that we've done as part of the plan process is we've looked at a corridor on 85 and what's the best way to, there was a PAB created on the west side cities to look at possibility of having rapid bus on those on that corridor. And that process is still going on, but that's a good suggestion. Maybe that's something we can look at in terms of our network planning. And another comment here, close network gaps and upgrading infrequent routes. Good feedback. Please, join us on our visionary network meeting for that. I think we would be happy to share some of that feedback with them as well as we go through the planning process. It's kind of all we had here on the chat. I want to maybe open up the floor to see if any specific questions you may have for me before we go to the breakout sessions from anyone here on the chat. Okay, not seeing any. I think we can have Deanna go ahead and put us out in the breakout groups. If that's okay.
Dawn, you
I'm gonna
actually just
wait
had a few more.
I was
Oh,
gonna say, I was gonna
sorry.
wait just a second because we have one from Callie that says, how does the VTP influence future projects? And I thought that would be a good way to go into your breakout.
Sure, I can answer, briefly here. What is, what is our process for this? So here's the thing. So what we do with this plan is we develop those projects. Our VTP actually helps projects get funding from federal and state governments. Our feedback is important to the regional plan Bay Area, which then gets more visibility. This planning process is actually going to give us a chance to develop those projects. So we'll actually have, we could probably develop criteria as part of this planning effort to pick the right projects that fit into the future. Another question here is, does VTA's land use plan include developing VTA-owned property? Yeah, so actually our real estate team has actually developed a transit-oriented communities policy strictly for the property that we owned. And it's looking at development feasibility along those, along the property that we own, done in partnership with our member agencies. And I think one of the things that we want to do is we also have actually an affordable housing policy for those VTA-owned sites that get developed. So our real estate team is working on that, and we will be including some of that discussion as we go forward in the VTP planning. Yeah, how can existing land use be changed to transit oriented? So a lot of that will be working with our member agencies to figure that out. You're right. One of the things that our county has done is we've developed in weird ways. A lot of the movement within the county is actually from people, is actually within the county from people living here and then working here as well. I think, how do we, change it? I think it's going to take some time. But working with our member agencies, they are working on things like precise plans and general plan updates that are trying to address some of that. It is hard, but I think working with them, we can try to figure out a way to do that. Yeah, another comment we have here is that VTA did lose 40% of its ridership since 2000, before the onset of COVID. During the same time, Seattle gained about 70% more riders. Does VTA ever look at best practice in the transit industry rather than trying to figure everything out? Yes, we are looking at opportunities to improve our transit service. That's one of the reasons we're looking at this visionary transit network feature as part of VTP, is really try to delve into the areas where we can improve our service. One of the things that we've learned through COVID is the people that used transit before COVID basically had to use it to get to work or school. They remained. A lot of that, those travelers did stay within our transit system. But since COVID, a lot of people also work from home. They have flexible schedules. So we need to be up to the task of trying to figure that out. And how do we get back some of that ridership? And we're hopeful that the visionary network process helps us get there. Another comment here, people in equity party areas also need to travel elsewhere in the county, correct? Just concentrating service in equity party areas is not good enough. Transit needs to cover the entire county, not just East San Jose and downtown. Will VTA consider putting its foot down to the cities if they don't consider changing the status quo? We do not have land use authority within Santa Clara County. That does remain with the cities. What we can do is work with cities on their good planning work, providing good feedback to them. We do have, a say in development around on the property that we own and that we will be asking developers to make we will be recommending certain things to developers to do. Part of this is working with our cities and having better communication with our cities. On our end, I think, helping them through their challenges they have with meeting requirements that the state and the region has put on them.
Hey, John, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but I do know that we've got Ron Gollum, who's our Director of Real Estate, on the
Okay.
line. And Ron may be able to expand even more on what you've
Sure.
said.
Okay, yeah, great.
Okay. Hi, John. Hi, everyone. I think the question that's being talked about is the land use authority question. And, this is a very tough subject because, cities basically have had pretty much absolute discretion with the requirements of planning law subject to doing housing elements. And I think as many on this call may know, the state's been passing legislation, most recently AB 2011, that really creates a process for allowing denser mixed use development, kind of including residential and commercial areas. There's a lot of tension between the state and cities on that. VTA's board are the elected officials of the cities in the county. And I can tell you from discussions we've had with our board about transit-oriented communities, they're very supportive of these ideas about kind of VTA working with cities to support them and assist them and encourage them in kind of densification and advancing this concept about how we can do denser development around transit. But once you say, well, gee, we ought to be able to mandate it or somehow VTA is in a control position, as you can appreciate, that creates a lot of concern and kind of shifts it from a collaboration type discussion to now an opposing interest kinds of discussion. And, a lot of this is obviously a political answer. And so I'm not going to, as a VTA staff person, I'm not going to kind of weigh in on the politics of things. But, I will observe that, there's a kind of a real challenge here. And I think that, to the extent you might think, well, gee, if VTA could just tell people what to do, that simplifies or explains things. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. In some cases, that can create kind of more conflict and potentially even make it challenging. But this is a great question, and there's no obvious answer. But I just wanted to add that context if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you, Ron, for that. Looking through, yeah, I think unless there's more comments, we'd be happy to go to the breakout session to hear more feedback. Just another question that popped up: will VTA publish land use threshold standards as part of the VTP 2050 Visionary Network? Cities will know what they need to do to get good transit service. That could be an option. I think we'd like to hear from a member agency is the best way to do that. Getting your feedback on that would be really helpful to help us understand the challenges. Okay.
You're ready. I'll send you to your rooms.
Okay. As we come back from the breakout session, wanted to hand it over to Ian or Larissa to maybe get some feedback on what you heard in your breakout group. I'll start with Ian.
Sure. Thank you, John. So I feel like my group is the best group. We got a lot of good insights. And in terms of bicycles and transit, bus service, as well as light rail, I did jot some notes down, and let me just read it through. Okay. What should be the focus? What goals should be developed for VTP? We didn't really go over each questions, but let me just share my screen and so that everybody can see it. All right. We want to make less emphasis on highway. There's too much investment put in highway already. Frequency, transit frequency is a key to successful transit system. And another priority is the wait time during transfer is discouraging people to take bus as a commute option. We got to close service gap to include night and evening services, improve every service that's currently once an hour to shorter headways. And before really focusing on the corridors that are really good, for example, El Camino Rail 522 or 22 corridor. Of course, enhanced service where needed. What San Jose, Almaden want to focus on equity priority community is not enough. People in the underserved or disadvantaged communities, they still commute out of the area all around the county to their job locations. So those needs to be captured. Secondarily, increase bus speed if possible. There seems to be a lack of protected or safer bikeways to connect people to areas such as major bus or light rail stations, such as Winchester Light Rail Station. There's a issue with wayfinding and signage in terms of bicycles. We do have the transit app as well as VTA Plus, but you seem to have to know it. So marketing is an issue. In terms of wayfinding, it's better to put landmarks and point of interest instead of just the station name. Around campus, San Jose State, there's a lot of stops closed on San Fernando Street, which is due to the city wanted to make that as a bike-oriented boulevard. And the distance to Santa Clara Street is just too far for many students. And some other comments here we see. Okay, so we need to plan the transportation network system adaptively to advanced technologies, autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles. Someone posted a question, BART to downtown as a big deal. Would it happen by 2050 and how does VTP address that?
Well, sorry, I guess what I was trying to say there
Yes.
is it's seeming I'm kind of skeptical that the federal government is actually going to grant the latest grant request. So if VTA ends up not able to pay for this, is there a backup plan for what VTA can do at that point instead of being left confused as to what the next option is if BART can't happen?
Thank you, Adam, again. And also the amount of time to take mass transit from point one to point B is just too lengthy, considering the land use situation here in South Bay. And there's a lack of efficient interconnected sections, for example, a transit loop, increasing transit points. So that's it from my group. Please feel free to put in the chat box if I missed anything. Thank you.
All right, great. We'll turn it over to Larissa, our breakout group.
Yeah, I can give a few of my notes too. But I just want to say I thought my breakout room was better, Ian. I think we were the best. So with my group, we talked about a big goal is shifting away from cars, both mode shift and by just numbers. Some feedback we got was about the reliability of service and better communication about service changes and delays. We do have the transit app, but it is difficult sometimes to use, they said, and the real-time arrival and departures, like the signs, would be helpful. I also got the comment having universal service, especially for seniors and low income, would be helpful. And we also got feedback that, back in 2000, the bus network was a lot more denser and there was more narrow spacing between bus stops. and that was more helpful and more people could use it then. And then feedback about making bus and light rail faster and more connections and communication between regional transit. Yeah, so that's basically I have 3 pages of heavy notes. I won't make you guys go through all of them.
Okay, thanks, Larissa. So I would just like to say all the breakout groups are amazing. In their own special way, they're all amazing and great. Appreciate the feedback. One of the things we heard in our breakout room was really encouraging design around people space. I think there's a sentiment that a lot of our designing work is based around how we address automobiles, and it'd be nicer to kind of focus a little bit more on the people that use the street. And also, if there were a way that kind of this VTP effort can kind of kick off some sort of design guidelines approach to doing smarter streets. There are a lot of feedback on having more frequent transit. Definitely with the visionary network process that we're doing as part of VTP, that's another place for everyone to really participate in for our transit system. They also looked at, well, what are we going to do with the kind of the other modes such as Caltrain, high-speed rail, things like that. What is our planning work going to be in relation to that? Just kind of noting that apart from bus and light rail, there are these other regional ways of getting around that we need to consider as part of this planning process. Improving transit amenities is another thing that we heard, really looking at how what we do on our transit system is really beneficial to the members of the public. One of our folks noted the lack of Wi-Fi that kind of goes off and on in our system on that. And then we also heard about, are there any opportunities for looking at other heavy rail options, focusing on something a little bit more than just light rail, something similar along the lines of BART? Are we considering things like BRT corridors, looking at ways that we move apart from the actual bus? I know we're really talking about things such as trolley bus. Another thing we heard is when it came to the question about interchanges, no more adding of lanes. Is there a better way to improve safety without adding lanes? They noted the highway interchanges that we are kind of focusing on, such as Tully. Making it an easier way through the seamless process for people to move through transit. Another thing we also heard was a better way to engage other groups such as major employers, and looking to us to maybe reach out to students, not just at San Jose State, but also De Anza and Mission College, and looking at other ways we can reach South County. And that's kind of what we heard. If there's anything else for my group, please feel free to add in the chat on that. So the next slide, I'm going to hand over. Again, thank you for everyone participating. I'm going to hand over the next slide over to Gretchen to kind of give us a timeline.
John. So we're really glad that you're here tonight, and welcome. Today's the first day of our outreach, the first meeting, the first day. We were just out at the farmers market earlier this afternoon, and we have a pretty robust slate of outreach planned, both on this VTP process as well as the Visionary Network. So for the VTP process, we'll actually be in the community until the end of January. And then after that, John and team will review all the feedback that we've gotten, and they'll start to develop a draft project list. This spring, we'll come back out to the community and we'll have a discussion around that draft project list. From there, that will go internal again, and that project list will be refined, and the draft plan will be developed. And then from there, we'll come back out to the community next fall to review the draft plan with you. And then in winter of 2023, we'll finalize that plan and get it adopted by the VTA board. I did want to post a quick ask for, or an update for you. We are launching an Ask VTA office hours where we're bringing in VTA staff that are specific subject matter experts on active transportation, on real estate, on transit, so that we can have an even longer conversation, just have a deeper discussion on these topical areas. And that is going to be happening on November 29th. And I'm typing in the Eventbrite link into chat here. Hopefully it will go. So we'd love to see you then. And if you want to just go ahead and flip to the last slide, John. This is just why I wanted to take the last couple of slides here, was really to hype that office hours. We've got 2 websites set up. We do have transit pop-up events and additional community meetings. And that's at vta.org/VTP2050 and then vta.org/visionary network. John, I relinquish the mic to you.
Okay, I just want to kind of echo Gretchen's thoughts. I want to thank everyone that participated. One of the challenges we've had in the past of doing the VTP is trying to get involvement, interest from various different groups. So I really appreciate your feedback, and we're trying to do this a different way now. We want to do a lot of public outreach at the beginning, try to get some initial feedback that influence what we bring to our board, that the public has a say in how we're planning for the future. I know it is hard kind of looking at 30 years in the future. It's really kind of an abstract thing, but we really appreciate your help on this. And I think also, if you want to reach out to us through both of those websites, feel free to do that. And also, if you know groups that we should be reaching out to, we would really appreciate that a link up to any of those groups. We'd be happy to go and talk to them about this process. We have, the next, few months to, kind of do some of this initial outreach. So we really would appreciate any help you all can provide us to reach more people through this process. Okay, if there's anything else, I'd really like to thank everyone again for joining us. We'll be planning more outreach events for this process. I do want to make a plug for the Visionary Network meeting. We're actually going to be doing a pop-up at Berryessa BART station on the 22nd, the Tuesday right before Thanksgiving. And then returning back on, I believe it's the 30th, but on the 30th of November, we're actually going to have a similar meeting in regards to just our Visionary Network and discussing all things transit at that meeting, which will happen, I believe, around the same time, 6 to 7:30 on either 29th or 30th. I hope it's one of those dates. I think it's the Wednesday.
The 30th, yes.
So, okay. So appreciate everyone for being a part of this discussion, and we look forward to reaching out to you more and hearing more feedback. Thank you so much.